Last week I introduced you to the destructive topic of critical theory. This ideology based on power of groups in society is damaging to our lives. The divisive way it attacks society is just wicked. Take slavery in the United States or the Holocaust or apartheid in South Africa. Violence against each one of these groups was deemed to be legal and voted into law in the country where it took place. These immoral laws in turn defended and shaped individual human moral actions, as it always does. As Christians, human beings are individually morally responsible for their actions, but immoral laws applied to groups of people in society will amplify and encourage human wickedness. The main problem I want to introduce you to with critical theory is that it functions as a worldview. Now, a worldview is simply a life compass which answers our basic questions about life and reality like who we are, what's our problems as human beings, what's our solution, what is our moral duty, what's our purpose in life. A worldview is nothing more than a meta-narrative, a lens through which we view and interpret life and society. Christianity, of which I'm a part, is one such worldview. Christianity explains reality in four basic acts: creation, the fall, redemption, and restoration. As a Christian, I ask myself, who am I? And the answer to me is that we are all creations of a holy, good, and loving Creator, God. So what's our problem? We've rebelled against God. What's our solution? God sent Jesus to bear the penalty of our rebellion and rescue us. So what's our duty? To love God. What's our life purpose? To glorify God. Now, this is the basic story that Christianity tells us, and is the grid through which most of the planet has viewed our world for the past 2,000 years. It's an anchor to which we interpret everything in our life and in society around us. Today, a new worldview is rising up among us. Critical theory tells a different story about reality. It begins not with creation, but with oppression. Omitting the elements of creation is very important because it changes our answer to the question, who are we? In critical theory, there's no creator who has a purpose and a design for our lives and our identities. We don't primarily exist in relationship to God, but in critical theory, we exist in relation to other people and to other groups. Our identity is not defined primarily in terms of who we are in God's eyes. In critical theory, we define ourselves in terms of race, class, sexuality, and gender identity. Oppression, not sin, becomes our fundamental problem in critical theory. What's the solution for them? Revolution, activism, resistance, violence, Marxist education. Critical theory works, my friends, to overthrow and dismantle anything that's viewed through the lens of social power. That's its primary duty, if you will. So what's the purpose in life if you're involved in critical theory? It's to work for the liberation of all oppressed groups, so that to achieve like a state of equity, a utopia on earth, if you will. Now, everything I'm saying last week and now may be very difficult to wrap your head and your thoughts around. But after all, the desire for a utopia, for a state of equity in the absence of oppression, is something we all want. Karl Marx was not all wrong when he said that oppression and power exists in society, because it does. The problem is the violent revolution Marxist critical theory advocates lead to is not to a utopia, but to a destructive world. Critical theory ranks society into groups of oppressors and oppressed. The question becomes, Which group is viewed as the greatest victim and which group is the oppressor? Intersectionality comes into play. It's easy for us to agree that a group of young black girls that are disabled and poor and maybe pregnant from rape, a member of some LGBTQ, and who've been sold into sex slavery, they'd be near the bottom in our minds as a victim. Conversely, I think we would all agree that an adult white male is certainly the oppressor to women and to black or Hispanic groups. We're being told that all the time. White supremacy. The power is with the adult white man. That's what we say. Do you agree with that? Take a look at this picture for me, would you? Tell me again, who has the power in society in this picture? It's not the adult male white man, is it? Dividing people by groups of color, race, gender, sexual orientation, political belief, or age is destructive. We are all individuals in the eyes of God, and His love for us asks us to be in union with each other. Not to be tolerant of groups, but to love the person our eyes fall upon. The worldview of critical theory conflicts with the Christian world viewpoint, not just with respect to a few isolated issues, but with respect to basic questions of epistemology, identity, power, and morality. It's impossible to reconcile the two worldviews. To the extent we adopt the premises of critical theory, which is rising among us, we will have to abandon basic tenets of Christianity. In a couple of weeks, I want to conclude this message on the ultimate destruction that critical theory is leading us to. But before I do, I want to provide one further message next week, next Wednesday, on one of the great pillars of critical theory, the subject of social justice. Don't miss it. Come with me next Wednesday. Join with me. Because conflict in our traditional biblical worldview and the critical theory worldview is more than an academic exercise. For those who have eyes and ears, the threat is real, my friends. But don't despair. There is good news. See you next week. Bye for now.